This is BBC Radio Derby. Derbyshire Primary Care Trust has urged teenage girls to have the NPV vaccination for cervical cancer following the death of a 22-year-old from Derby. The vaccination is available to all 13 and 14-year-old girls from their GP or at school. Well, Rei Bennett overcame the disease at 21 and has campaigned to raise awareness of the vaccine and bring the screening age for women down from 25 to 20. And Rachel joins me this morning. Good morning to you. Thanks for joining us. When did you discover that you'd got cervical cancer?
I was about 20 years old when I started suffering from bleeding during and after intercourse. It took me about 8 months or so to actually get the courage to go see my GP because obviously I was terrified. I was a very young girl. I was at university here in Derby. And then eventually when I did go see my GP, she sent me off to hospital saying that it was something to do with my contraceptive pill. Once I got to hospital, I went for what's called a colposcopy, and that's when they look at the cervix under a microscope and apply an iodine solution to see if there's a reaction. There was a reaction, which meant I had pre-cancerous cells. Those are the cells that are normally picked up during a smear test, so had I been eligible for a smear test, it would have been picked up quite a lot sooner. And then they sent me off to hospital again to have those cells removed under a loop cone biopsy, which is just a day operation where they just whipped them out under general anaesthetic. Again, every single one of these stages, they kept reassuring me I didn't have cancer, I was too young for cancer, that I was being paranoid. And so I convinced myself that everything was going to be fine. They called me back a couple of weeks later to discuss my results, and that's when they said I did have cancer.
I know that you're calling for the screening age to be brought down from 25 to 20. Do you think with everything that goes on in the life of a 20-year-old, do you think you would have actually gone for that screening?
I was quite a worrier when I was that age, and I think I would have done. And if I was educated from a young age as to what a screening was, as to what HPV was, and the symptoms of cervical cancer, then I think I definitely would have gone. And it's when I was 21 and I got diagnosed, I didn't even know what a smear test was for. I was fully aware that when I was 25 I'd be sent to have one, but I had no idea that it was about preventing cancer. And I think that it shows that there's a huge problem with the education system, and I'm hoping now that the vaccine's in place that these young girls are actually being told what they're being vaccinated against so that they can be aware of what the causes are of cervical cancer and what the symptoms are, so that if they do have the same symptoms I did, they'd go to their GP a lot sooner.
And from your experience and having gone through this, has it changed with regards to younger girls over the years? Are we any better equipped to tell these young girls about screening?
I don't believe we are. I attended the medical panel meeting where they decided whether or not to change the government's age, and there was a person there that said they'd done a study on these younger women, and there was quite a dramatic number of them which said they had no idea what they were being vaccinated against. And I think it goes to show that with all the women that are out there that haven't got a clue what's going on, that it shows that the government aren't telling the teachers to tell the kids what's going on. And as well, the GPs that are misdiagnosing women, they also don't know that these women are getting cervical cancer, that it's possible for a woman under 25 to get cervical cancer. So it shows that the education system needs changing, not just for the pupils, but for the doctors as well.
It's interesting you talk about the education and the worries and the concerns and maybe even the embarrassment of the thought of having a smear test and not actually knowing what goes on with regards to that smear test. And do you think that if girls were made more aware, that they'd be more likely to actually go and have the smear test?
I think so. If more women like myself come out of the woodwork and admit that they've had cervical cancer, and even if they've just had pre-cancerous cells, then I think a lot more women would be more comfortable with going. Because although it's not a very nice experience having a smear test, but it's something that you need to do because we can prevent a cancer. And I don't think people are realising how amazing that is.
Is that almost one of the problems that, around, I was going to say school playgrounds, but, around colleges and around schools, that if somebody has a smear test, suddenly then, stories go around the school, oh, this is what it's like, and it almost becomes, a horrific experience, which actually some girls think, well, I don't want to go through that.
I think, again, you need to have the positive stories that go along with that. You need to show them that there is a risk there, and so it's worth going for a smear test as opposed to getting cervical cancer.
How are you now?
I'm very good, thank you. Yes, I just got my all clear from my latest smear last week, and that's the first all clear I've had since I got cancer, so it's officially over.
And you were talking about the fact that, people like you need to come out and actually tell their stories. Is this something that you're doing, sort of on a regular basis now?
Absolutely. I find that even when I'm just on a night out, I end up going off on one. I can't help myself. But I find that every single woman that I speak to, at least one of them in a group of women, have had precancerous cells, and none of their friends even knew about it because nobody's talking about it. It's so common, and that's why if people just spoke about it, then nobody would be as freaked out when they got a positive result in a smear test.
And it's positive to hear you talking like that, isn't it? Because I'm sure that even if it's an inspiration to one person this morning, then you've done the job.
Absolutely, I hope so.
Rachel Bennett, thank you for joining us on the programme this morning.
Thank you very much.